What's going on, baseball fans? How you doing? So we got the World Series coming up here in a few days. So in this video, I'm going to break down the Astros and the Phillies position by position and see which teams have the edge at each of those positions. Let's go talk about it. Before I get started, if you're new to the channel, think about subscribing down below. Hit the like button, the bell button, the share button. Hit every single button you can. Let's start off with the managers. We got Dusty Baker versus Rob Thompson. We all know Dusty Baker has been around for quite a minute, and my goodness, he's had a lot of success in his career. Almost 4,000 games managed, over 2,000 wins for his career. He's won a couple of pennants. He's been to the World Series a few times now, was just in the World Series last year, was a win away from the World Series in 2020. And hey, Dusty Baker, we all know he's still looking for that World Series ring, but when it comes to experience, obviously he has the edge here. He's been around since 1993, getting to the World Series in 2002, almost getting to the World Series in 2003. And like I mentioned, he was there last year, almost there in 2020. But other than that, he's had just really good seasons overall as a manager. He's one of the most successful managers in the history of baseball. But then on the other side, you got Rob Thompson. He's a veteran as well. He's been around for quite a while, but taking over Joe Girardi this year after a very bad start. I mean, taking a look here, 21-29 by the end of May. They needed a change. Rob Thompson was the man to step in over Joe Girardi, and obviously the Phillies have just completely turned it around. 19-8 in June, 15-10 in July, 18-11 in August. A bit of a bumpy September, but here they are in the World Series. This team loves playing for Rob Thompson, but I think in the end you got to give the edge here to Dusty Baker based off experience alone. But hey, Dusty Baker, he's had plenty of experience and he hasn't been able to win the ring. Maybe Rob Thompson, we'll have to wait and see how this plays out. Could he have the right recipe? Dusty Baker, he's still searching for that first ring. We'll have to wait and see how this goes, but I'm going to give the edge here to Dusty Baker. Let's talk about the benches. Starting off with the Houston Astros, really like the Astros bench. Christian Vasquez, of course, I love Christian Vasquez, longtime Red Sox. He has been very solid for the Astros. I mean, the combination of Martin Maldonado and Christian Vasquez, I mean, that is just amazing. The defense, the handling of the pitching staffs, you know, the arms on those guys. Very solid tandem right there. Trey Mancini, don't forget about Trey Mancini coming over from the Baltimore Orioles at the deadline. He's brought a decent bat to them. Mauricio Dubon, he brings good defense. He brings versatility. If you take a look at the versatility that he's provided, he's played center field, shortstop, second, left, third base, right. He can move all over. And then you have someone like a David Hensley as well. He can move around in the infield. He'll bring a solid bat. A short sample size this year, over 16 games, but really solid numbers. Hit 345, a 441 on base, 586 slugging. Now, for the Phillies, I think I like their bench too. Garrett Stubbs, I mean, you're not really going to be utilizing him as much, obviously, because you have JT Realmuto, but the Astros, the catching that they have, I definitely think that's better. I like Edmundo Sosa. He can move around. Shortstop third. He can play left as well, second. And if we're taking a look, when we're moving on to Dalton Guthrie and Matt Vierling, I think, you know, a couple of solid outfielders that can, you know, they can provide some kind of a bat there. Matt Vierling, he's had a couple of hits in this postseason, but overall, I think I'm going to give the edge to the Astros here. Let's take a look at the catchers. For the Astros, we got Martin Maldonado along with Christian Vasquez, and for the Phillies, we got JT Realmuto. Let's start off with the Astros. Martin Maldonado, obviously very good with the pitching staff, but with the bat, you're not really going to get a whole lot. Did have 15 home runs this year, but a very bad slash line. However, in the playoffs, he always seems to turn the bat on, so that is one thing to consider. Christian Vasquez, a little bit better with the bat, but still nothing crazy. When it comes to these two guys, you're going to get very solid defense, handling of the pitching staffs, but with the Phillies, JT Realmuto, this guy is simply the best catcher in all of Major League Baseball. A very good slash line, hit 276, 342 on base, 478 slugging, 22 home runs, but he plays great defense as well. He was the #1 catcher in all of Major League Baseball this year with a 6.5 Fangraph WAR. This one is easy for me. I'm going to go JT Realmuto and the Phillies. On to the first baseman, and we have Rhys Hoskins for the Phillies and Yuli Gurriel for the Astros. Rhys Hoskins has been going off in this postseason. Not too much with the batting average and the on base, but look at the slugging, a 545 slugging. He's got 5 homers, 11 RBIs, 7 runs scored. He has been very, very good in this postseason so far. Had a pretty decent regular season as well. 246 average, a 332 on base, 462 slugging, a 122 WRC plus, 30 homers. Rhys Hoskins, very solid at first base. As for Yuli Gurriel, the batting champ from last year, a bit of a down season, only hitting 242, 8 homers, a 288 on base, a 360 slugging, only an 85 WRC plus. He has been hitting a bit in the postseason, though. Has a couple of homers, a few runs driven in, batting average at 367, the on base at 367, a 567 slugging, a 168 WRC plus. He has been stepping it up in the postseason so far, but I got to give the edge here to Hoskins. Sure, maybe that slash line, besides the slugging isn't looking very good, but he's been hitting bombs. Rhys Hoskins absolutely gets the nod here. Let's move on to the second baseman. We have Jean Segura versus Jose Altuve. Let's start off with Jean Segura. He's had a couple of clutch moments this postseason, both offensively and defensively. With Jean Segura, a decent line this year. Hit 277, a 336 on base. The slugging is a little low at 387. Did have 10 home runs, a 1.7 Fangraph WAR. However, Jose Altuve, this guy to me has just quietly had an amazing year. I haven't heard anything about Jose Altuve this year. Has been a little quiet in the playoffs, has started to wake up a little bit, but this season, man, hit 300 with a 387 on base, a 533 slugging, 28 home runs, a 6.6 Fangraph WAR. That was actually 8th best according to the Fangraph leaderboards this year. This is an easy win for Jose Altuve and the Astros. Moving on to the shortstops, we got Jeremy Pena for the Astros and Bryson Stott for the Phillies. Taking a look at Jeremy Pena, this guy's had a solid rookie season. I call him the forgotten rookie because if you remember, Jeremy Pena was off to a really good start this year, but then Julio Rodriguez, Adley Rutschman came up and they just took over. But Jeremy Pena quietly had a really solid year, more defensively overall, but a pretty solid offensive season as well. 22 homers, the 426 slugging, a 102 WRC plus, not too bad. But again, more with the defense overall. But with Jeremy Pena, he has really stepped up in this postseason. Over 33 at-bats, hitting 303 with a 324 on base, a 991 OPS. Big home run against the Yankees in the ALCS. Big home run against the Mariners that ended up clinching that series. Jeremy Pena getting the ALCS MVP. He has just been phenomenal this postseason. As for Bryson Stott, not an amazing year this year offensively. If you take a look at the numbers here, hit 234, 295 on base, 358 slugging, pretty low WRC plus. He's played okay defense out there, though. This postseason, he's had a couple of moments, but overall, not amazing numbers, but he has had a couple of big spots. In the end, I think this is an easy win for Jeremy Pena and the Houston Astros. Moving on to third base, we got Alex Bregman on the Astros versus Alec Bohm on the Phillies. Alex Bregman has really turned around his career. He was having a couple of seasons there where he just looked lost, but this year, he has really found his way. A solid slash line, hitting 259, a 366 on base. The slugging, sure, could be a little higher, but 23 home runs, a 136 WRC plus, playing phenomenal defense as usual out there. If you take a look, he actually played his best defense in his career this past year. Bregman, very solid, very solid. But Alec Bohm, taking a look at him, pretty solid year. If you remember going back to the beginning of the year, you saw the lip reading of him saying he just hated playing in Philly. He hated it there. He didn't really mean it. He was just frustrated. He was playing some bad defense. The bat wasn't really there, but ended up having a really good season overall. Hit 280, a 315 on base. Sure, could be a little higher. The slugging could be a little bit higher. Yes, these numbers definitely could be higher. I wouldn't call it a really good season, but a decent season overall for Alec Bohm. But second half, he actually was better. The WRC plus was better in the second half. OPS was better. But in the end, again, another win for the Astros here. Alex Bregman, he's just been so good. He stepped up in this postseason as well. I'm going to give the vote here for Bregman and the Astros. Moving on to the outfield, starting in left field, we have Yordan Alvarez for the Astros and Kyle Schwarber for the Phillies. Ooh, this is a pretty tough one here. My goodness, these are two game-changing kind of hitters. Just so much power in both of these bats. You're not going to get a whole lot of defense from these two, but my goodness, these two bats can easily change the game. Let's start off with Alvarez. An amazing season this year, hitting 306 with a 406 on base, a 613 slugging. Look at that 185 WRC plus. My gosh, Yordan Alvarez just killing it. But Kyle Schwarber, on the other hand, second in Major League Baseball, only behind Aaron Judge with 46 home runs, a 504 slugging, 128 WRC plus. Yeah, Yordan Alvarez definitely had the better overall season, but Kyle Schwarber, in the last round against the Padres, man, oh man, he really stepped up with a couple of bombs there. Yordan Alvarez was really good against the Mariners, but was pretty quiet against the Yankees, drove in a run or two. But Kyle Schwarber, in the last few games, has been the better hitter overall. Right now, I mean, obviously Yordan Alvarez is the go-to guy, but I'm going to go with a tie here because Kyle Schwarber, he has really been stepping up here in the last few games. He's just been hitting some bombs. And overall, when you take a look at their postseason numbers, Kyle Schwarber has 3 home runs so far in this postseason, 6 RBIs, while Yordan Alvarez, a few more RBIs, 2 home runs, right around even for me. But with Kyle Schwarber, with how he was hitting in the National League Championship Series against the Padres, I think that's enough to, at least right now, to close the gap between the two. I'm going to go with a tie. On to center field, we got Chas McCormick on the Astros versus Brandon Marsh on the Phillies. This one's pretty close. Chas McCormick, Brandon Marsh, you're not going to get a whole lot with the bats here. They're going to play some decent defense out there in center field. Not going to be mind-blowing defense by any means, but Chas McCormick this year hit .245, had a decent on base of .332, a .407 slugging, a .114 WRC plus, the 14 home runs as well. And as for Brandon Marsh, remember he got traded from the Angels to the Phillies. Not really an okay slash line, but he was contributing a bit. Hit .245 overall in the year, .295 on base, a .384 slugging. If you take a look at how he did with just the Phillies, he did hit better with the Phillies. .288 average, a .319 on base, a .455 slugging over the 41 games. When it comes to their defense, Chas McCormick and Brandon Marsh, when it comes to defensive runs saved, you're not really going to see a whole lot there. With Chas McCormick, he has a 3.0 UZR. When it comes to Brandon Marsh, a negative 0.1 UZR with the Phillies. I'm going to give the slight edge here to Chas McCormick. He's been hitting a little bit better in this postseason. Also came up with a big home run against Garrett Cole in Game 3 after that mishap in the outfield with the Yankees. So Chas McCormick, I'm going to give him the slight edge for right now. And moving on to right field, we have Kyle Tucker for the Astros versus Nick Castellanos for the Phillies. Nick Castellanos this year has not had a good first season with the Philadelphia Phillies. Taking a look at the overall numbers, hit .263 with a .305 on base, a .389 slugging. That is way down from last year with the Cincinnati Reds. Had a .576 slugging last year. That ended up getting him a big contract. And my goodness, he has just not lived up to expectations this year. However, he has been producing a bit in the postseason. 6 RBIs so far. The slash line still isn't great, only a WRC plus of 60, but he has been contributing. He's also scored 5 runs. Kyle Tucker, on the other hand, a much better season overall, but more quiet in the postseason. If you take a look, only hitting .214 so far this postseason, has an RBI, has a home run, but we need to see a little bit more out of Kyle Tucker. Nick Castellanos has definitely been the better producer in the postseason so far. I could see someone like Kyle Tucker heating up here in this World Series. He's starting to make a little bit better contact. We'll have to wait and see if Kyle Tucker can do anything. I am going to give him the slight edge because he just had the much better season than Nick Castellanos, which Castellanos, man, imagine if he was having the season that he did with the Reds. I mean, my goodness, this Phillies lineup would just be insane. But Kyle Tucker, for me, he gets the edge for right now. Let's move on to the designated hitters, and I'm going to make this one easy. It's Bryce Harper. This guy has been an absolute machine this postseason. My goodness, look at the numbers he has so far in the postseason. Over 11 games and 29 at-bats, hitting .419 with a .444 on base, a .907 slugging. He has one of the highest OPSs of all time when it comes to a single postseason. 5 home runs, 11 RBIs. This guy has just been out of his mind. The eventual game-winning home run in Game 5 against the Padres, that'll go down as one of the most memorable home runs in postseason history. And for the Astros, they're basically doing a rotation of Trey Mancini and Diaz. Sometimes Yordan Alvarez will go in there. Imagine if Yordan Alvarez was in this spot. Oh my goodness, what a tough debate that would be. But I still think with how hot Harper has been, I would probably still lean Harper over Yordan Alvarez, especially right now. But Harper, out of his mind. He was going through some injuries this year, but he got healthy right in time for the postseason. He's been awesome. Bryce Harper and the Phillies easily win this one. Now let's talk some pitching. Let's start with the bullpens first. For the Astros, you got Ryan Presley at the back end, Rafael Montero, Hector Neris. You got Ryan Stanek, Brian Abreu, Hunter Brown. These are the main guys that we've been seeing so far in this postseason. You know, Rafael Montero, man, give him a lot of credit. He was basically a lost cause coming to the Astros this year. If you take a look at the numbers that he had last year, had a 6.39 ERA, compared to a 2.37 this year. He's been having big moments here in the postseason. You gotta love what he's been doing. He's been throwing the ball hard, 96.5 miles an hour on average. Gotta love what Rafael Montero has been doing. He's been a pretty underrated guy, and obviously Presley at the back end as well. Look at the numbers that Ryan Presley has had this year. Another very good season for Presley. 50 games, a 2.98 ERA, 2.31 FIP. Taking a look at the saves, 33 saves. He's had a good postseason so far. Hasn't given up any runs. Gotta love what he's been doing. You know, Hector Neris has had some solid spots. Brian Abreu, he hasn't given up any runs at all this postseason. Struck out Giancarlo Stanton in the, one game with a 99-mile-an-hour fastball right in the corner. Stanton didn't even swing at it. It was that electric. He's got a big old slider as well. Really good season for Abreu. 1.94 ERA, 2.12 FIP, 14 strikeouts per 9 so far this postseason. Hasn't given up any runs. Gotta love what Brian Abreu has been doing. Overall, this Astros bullpen has just been phenomenal in this postseason. Now, for the Phillies, they've had a really good bullpen as well. You got Dominguez, you got Alvarado. Zach Eflin's been getting a lot of work in the bullpen. You got David Robertson, Brad Hand. You know, Dominguez, he has been, for the most part, pretty electric all year. Big old fastball. Really good numbers so far in this postseason over 6 games. Ran into a little bit of trouble against the Padres there in Game 5, but in the end, ended up being fine. Jose Alvarado, he has just been throwing heat, averaging 98 miles an hour this season, and putting up pretty decent numbers overall this postseason. However, that 5.61 FIP this postseason does slightly worry me a little bit, but this guy's got great stuff. Sometimes he can get, he can not do so well with the walks, so let's see if he can get that turned around here. Zach Eflin, like I said, he's been being used here in the postseason. He's not been amazing overall, the 5.68 ERA so far, but a pretty solid FIP of 3.74. David Robertson, he has seen some action as well. You would think he would have some more action. You remember they acquired him at the deadline from the Cubs. The FIP of a 5.02, 2.45 ERA though. You know, in the end, I'm going Astros so much here, but when you look at the numbers these guys have been putting up, I mean, this bullpen has been absolutely nails. Now, the Phillies, they have gone up against some good offenses here. You've had the Braves. I mean, you've had the Padres. You got some really good bats there. So, while with the Astros, you had a Yankees offense that was slumping. The Mariners offense had some pretty good bats, but those don't compare to offenses like, the Braves and some really good bats of the Padres. But the Astros bullpen has just looked really nasty. I'm going to give the edge to the Astros once again. And last but not least, let's talk the starting pitching. The Houston Astros starting pitching has just been amazing this year from start to finish. Amazing starting pitching here in the postseason. Justin Verlander probably going to win the Cy Young this year. Framber Valdez, an extremely good number 2 this year. That curveball against the Yankees was just absolutely filthy. Christian Javier, filthy against the Yankees. Lance McCullers Jr., not quite as good as these other guys and how they've done this postseason, but he was able to get through it in his last start. Really good starting pitching here for the Astros. My goodness, just effective, just quality starting pitching, and they're just deep as well. As for the Phillies, on the other hand, Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, these are your 2 top dogs, man. These guys are extremely good. Now, they don't have as deep of starting pitching as the Houston Astros, but when you got 2 guys like this at the top of your rotation that can essentially carry you, anything can happen here. So the Phillies, sure, they definitely don't have deeper starting pitching than the Astros, but when you got these 2 guys who could each possibly have 2 starts this postseason, the Phillies definitely can hang with the Astros starting pitching. And then you got someone like a Ranger Suarez who's had his moments this postseason. Not obviously as good as a Zach Wheeler or an Aaron Nola, but he's there. He can give you some innings. He can even come out of the bullpen as well. So Ranger Suarez, definitely a flexible arm here. But again, you have to give the edge to the Astros here. I feel like I've gone Astros so much, but in the end, this Astros starting pitching, they're just good. They're deep. I mean, but in the end, though, the Phillies, like I said, they can match up with this Astros team. But the Astros, with how good the starting pitching has been all year and this postseason, it'll be interesting to see how they can do against some of these big bats like Harper and Schwarber in this lineup. I'm very intrigued to see it. But in the end, for the starting pitching, I have to give the edge to the Astros. So those are my thoughts on whether or not the Astros or the Phillies have the edge when it comes to each position. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Would you have gone another way for any of these positions? Let me know. But that's all I have for right now. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you next time. Sponsoring today's video, we have SeatGeek. If you're interested in finding a good deal on tickets, go check out SeatGeek. And also, use my code HYDE. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. And also sponsoring today's video, we have Prize Picks. If you are into the sports betting game and you're tired of FanDuel and DraftKings, go give Prize Picks a chance. They play the over-unders instead of actual people. If you use my code GINGER, you'll get a 100% deposit match.